Hey, this is Antonio. Welcome back to my channel. Who's ready for some fighting words? In this video, I want to do a fight breakdown for David Avanesyan as he'll soon be taking on Terence Bud Crawford. And little sidebar, if you like the videos, please like, please share, please subscribe to the channel. And while you're at it and you're looking at the video, please hit that thumbs up. Without further ado, let's jump into it. First thing we notice when we look at David Avanesyan, we're going to notice the power. He's very, very, very heavy-handed. Doesn't mess around. He's there to thump. I think he has boxing skills, but I think he would prefer to brawl. I think he's one of those guys who just wants to line you up and get you up out of there. But the game plan pretty much doesn't change. I don't care what opponent he's facing. The game plan is going to be the same. I'm going to back you up, and I'm going to unload bombs. He throws with very bad intention. Everything he throws, whether it's a jab, there's nothing there's nothing that doesn't have bad intention on it. Everything has 100%. Everything is thrown with 100%. Everything is thrown with the intentions of crippling. David basically just walks guys down and he just unloads the bombs. He just drops the bombs especially once you hit those ropes or you find yourself in a corner. He's going to unload bombs. He's a really good combination puncher. I'll actually give him that too. Once David has the guy in the ropes, it's go time. You know, when he's in the center of the ring, I'm not going to say he can't box, but that's clearly not his comfort zone. He would rather close that distance and then get it cracking. David has vicious body shots. And this is going to be interesting because I've honestly never really seen Terence Crawford in there with somebody who's like a vicious body puncher, to be honest with you. Or let me rephrase that. Maybe somebody who could implement it. That's going to be interesting. And I mean, I've never really seen Terence Crawford take a sustained attack from anybody. And you know what, David Avanesyan, it's going to be a sustained attack. You better believe it. If you can't get him out of there, if you can't back him off, and most guys that he's been in there with have not been able to back him off, it's going to be a problem. David is extremely tough and durable. That's one thing where I noticed with him, it's just like he can go. You look at his size, he's a big boy. You know, he's a big boy. And the way he fights, his style is very aggressive. It's very up close and personal. There's not a whole lot of head movement, so you know he's coming for battle. He can take a good shot. I mean, he's been hit. He gets hit. It's not like he's hard to find. It's not like he's hard to tag. You can tag him, you know, because you know where he's going to be. He's going to be searching for you. He's going to be looking for you. He's definitely going to be in your face. It's never going to be a point where an opponent's saying, I don't know where David Avanesyan is. He's right there. In a perfect world, he would always fight in the pocket. I think at heart, he's just a brawler. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I just think some people are more naturally aggressive than other people. And he clearly is a more aggressive guy. Errol Spence is an aggressive guy. Sean Porter is an aggressive guy. Danny Garcia is an aggressive guy. There's a lot of guys who are just naturally aggressive. It doesn't mean that they don't have boxing skills, and it doesn't mean that they don't have technique behind that. It just means they like to get the party started. That's all it means. David can easily fight. Listen, and when I say he's a durable guy, this is a guy who can easily fight right now if he wanted to at 154 pounds, and will probably finish out his career at 160 pounds. So again, he's a big guy. Terence Crawford is not the biggest guy in the world. He's not. You know, a lot of that you see is him lifting a lot of weights. You know, he's just not naturally like a huge guy or anything like that. Keep in mind, he came from like 140, you know, so he's just not the biggest guy in the world. But David Avanesyan, it's going to be interesting because I know he can absorb a lot of shots. And, you know, Terence isn't known to throw a ton of shots. So if you have somebody who can absorb a lot of shots and you're not throwing a ton of shots, by the time you really get another good crack at him, he probably would have absorbed that and would be back on you. So I believe this is really going to be an interesting fight. That's overall what I'm trying to get at. He does have a little bit of finesse in his game. I will definitely say there was one fight in particular where he threw not one, not two, but three hooks to the body, and all three of them connected. And I mean, it was just beautiful. Like all three of them connected, just a triple hook. And I'm just like, okay, all right. Like again, if you just look at him on a surface level, you would say, all right, well, he's a good guy. He's going to give you a good show. But is he the caliber? I think he is. I think he has a lot of facets to his game. I also think it's his comfort level. I think in a perfect world, he would get his opponent to scrap with him, and basically, who's got more machismo in the end, But if he has to, and if he has somebody who can fire back, in other words, somebody who also has heavy hands and can fire back or quite possibly push him back, well, then he's got another layer to himself, and that's his finesse. No, he doesn't use it a lot. No, you're not going to see it throughout the duration of the fight. But it's there. And every once in a while, he gets a little creative and he thinks outside the box. David's footwork is average. There's nothing particularly special about it. And I think, fighting Terence Crawford, that's going to be an issue on two levels. One, because he's a very predictable fighter. But two, because Bud a lot of times will change, you might be southpaw, you might be orthodox, and he can do that several times in a round. I mean, it's I'm not saying like, oh, from 1 to 3 I'm gonna be orthodox, and from 4 to 9 I'm going to be southpaw. No, he could very well do it several times in a round. And in order to really deal with something like that, you do need solid footwork. I'm not necessarily saying you need great footwork, but you do need solid footwork because you're going to have to keep up with that, and it's going to throw you off just him changing his stance and what now his lead hand is going to be. David is a fast starter. And again, see, if you notice, a lot of the things about David, I feel like are going to push Terence Crawford. I really do. I feel like they're going to really test him because David's a fast starter. And it's going to be interesting to see how Terence Crawford deals with that. Yeah, Terence Crawford fought Sean Porter. But David Avanesyan is a lot different than Sean Porter. For one, he hits hard. Sean Porter is not known for like his overall, colossal power. David Avanesyan can hit. He can thump. So Terence is going to have to be mindful of that. He's going to have to be conscious of that. And he also starts early. So when you're dealing with a guy who hits that hard and he starts early, like it's not like, oh, I'm going to get into my groove and I'm just going to pump my jab and then, we're going to see where it takes me. He's not that type of guy. He's going to come out the gate with combinations. He's going to come out the gate with a heavy 1-2. And yeah, I get it. Maybe some of these combinations are going to be a little simple, but they're still going to come with 100% impact. They're not going to be slouches of punches or anything like that. Because he is aggressive, he would prefer... So let me say it like this. You got to have a guy who starts really fast. You're going to have a guy who hits really hard. And then you're going to have a guy who typically comes out in that first round with a high guard. So he's not really giving you anything to work with. And he's coming to take everything that you have with his heavy shots because he's going to stalk you. So I think the footwork, especially early for Terence Crawford, is going to be very important, but also very important for David Avanesyan because he's got to cut off that ring, but he has to cut it off early. Like I said, I don't believe Terence Crawford is going to do any damage to David Avanesyan at least the first 2-3 rounds. Just simply because of the high guard, just simply because he's a durable guy, just simply because, like I said, he's going to finish out his career at 160. He's a pretty solid guy. So, and he's throwing heavy metal. He's throwing heavy. And he's throwing heavy, he's throwing in combinations. And I think when you put all that together in combination, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a really interesting fight. I think rounds 1 through 5 are going to easily be the most important rounds, maybe even 1 to 4. Because I think by 4/5, I think both parties will know what they're getting into. I think Terence Crawford will settle into whatever mode he's going to settle into. And I think David Avanesyan will have made up in his mind you're not as tough as I probably thought you were, or whatever by then. And then he might turn up the notch, or, if Terence can push him back, who's to say? That's a big old question mark right there. Yeah, like I said, just checking to see where I am. Now, I got another segment right here. What will give Crawford problems from David Avanesyan? Well, like I said before, the power. I think power, but also early power is going to be very interesting. It's tough to say who's the most powerful guy that Terence Crawford has fought. Possibly Kell Brook, maybe. I dare not say Jeff Horn, but he did kind of push Pacquiao around. There was a lot of wrestling involved in that. And Sean Porter is not known for his power. Like, he's not Hercules. He's not known for that. But I think the power of David Avanesyan is gonna take an adjustment, and it's also gonna dictate the spacing of this fight, because we know where David wants to fight. And I think Terence Crawford has to find a safe medium, because Terence Crawford has been wobbled, more than once. He's been wobbled, and he has a tendency to get mean in a fight. And I've said this several times when it comes to Terence Crawford. He has a mean streak. And if you hit him hard, he wants to get the get back right then and there. And that could be a problem, because you're fighting a guy who's really tough. You're fighting a guy who can thump. And yeah, you can get your get back, but maybe you can get your get back in the next round or 2 rounds from now. But you need to set him up. You need to line him up to get your get back. David's going to be on go from round 1. That's another thing that will give Crawford problems, because Crawford does need to download information in the opening rounds. I'd probably say from round, 1, 2, and possibly 3. But at least by the end of 3, he's going to know what he's in for, and he's going to know what he needs to. I think 1 to 3, he's going to know what he's in for. I think by 4, he's going to know what he needs to do to offset what David Avanesyan is doing. That's what I think. David Avanesyan has a really solid gas tank as well. And you're dealing with a guy in Terence Crawford who's a lot more paced. You have somebody who would prefer 65, 70 miles an hour versus a guy who doesn't mind going 80 miles an hour. And again, I think the spacing is going to be huge. I think the footwork is going to be incredibly huge in this fight, but also the pace. Who's going to set the pace? I think a lot of questions with Terence Crawford versus Errol Spence gets answered in this fight, only in the sense that you have another pressure fighter in David Avanesyan, and you have a guy who has really solid cardio, and he's durable. Like, he's not a walk in the park. Nobody's just gonna go in there and lay at David Avanesyan down. What really did it for me is Josh Kelly fight. Josh Kelly is somebody that I really admire, and I think has a lot of skill. And he reminds me a lot of Roy Jones and sometimes Pernell Whitaker. Am I saying he's on their level? No, before you start writing these comments. I'm not saying he's on their level. But I am saying he's a very in-the-moment fighter. His timing is like impeccable. Especially in the only critique with Josh Kelly is he doesn't, he can't go 12 rounds. But outside of that, like those opening rounds from round 1 to 5, Josh Kelly is like amazing. He's fun to watch. He's energetic. He's like, he can see everything coming. He's super slick. And it's like almost as if he's like, how do I explain this? It's almost as if he didn't watch any film on his opponent. He just showed up and he's just working as he goes. And David Avanesyan just wore him down and beat him senseless. He really beat him up. And I was not expecting that in that fight. But I got to say I was impressed. I don't think Josh Kelly is a walk in the park. I think Josh Kelly has a little bit of what Terence Crawford has, meaning he's a thinking fighter. They're both thinking fighters, and they're both very paced fighters. Josh Kelly's not going to run across that ring and just start slugging with somebody or, throwing wild combinations. He's just not that guy. Terence Crawford also is not just going to run across the ring and do anything like that. And I think the Josh Kelly fight is a real gauge that, number one, David Avanesyan is deserving of this fight. And I know a lot of people are going to say, how are you going to put Josh Kelly and Terence Crawford in the same box? I'm not putting them in the same box. But do I think that they have a lot of similarities and characteristics in terms of boxing? Absolutely. Yes, I do. I really do think they have a lot of, commonplaces when it comes to the sport. I just think they're both creative guys. I think they're also both very thinking and pace guys. But on top of that, they know how to project. They know what they're doing probably like 2 rounds out. And that's impressive when you can play chess in the ring. Weaknesses of David Avanesyan. I feel like he's predictable. David Avanesyan is the same fighter, regardless of who he is fighting. He's the same fighter, and you're dealing with a guy in Terence Bud Crawford who is going to download all that early, and it's going to be a very uphill battle once he's fully downloaded what he needs to do, what punches he needs to throw at you, what combinations he needs to set on you, where you're weak in the body. He's going to figure all that out. And if you're predictable, he not only is going to figure it out, he's going to hit the target. One of the things that I noticed about David Avanesyan, where I feel like it's going to be a real weakness in fighting Terence Bud Crawford, is Bud can wrestle. He actually wrestled in high school. His son is like a champion wrestler, and Bud can wrestle. He did it with Jeff Horn, did it with Sean Porter, and Sean Porter's what did it for me, because Sean is a pretty aggressive guy, and he's also done other sports outside of boxing. And for the way I feel like Bud kind of just manhandled him in the clinch, I knew that was the beginning of the end. When Sean Porter couldn't have his way in a corner or have his way in a clinch, it was the beginning of the end. And David Avanesyan has no clinch work whatsoever. He's not much of a clincher. He'll more or less just like the referee come in and break him up. And he's not going to do anything in a clinch. It's almost like if you tie him up, you'll just shut him down. And that's going to be a huge detriment because Terence Crawford is deceptively strong. But on top of being deceptively strong, he is incredibly knowledgeable when it comes to wrestling and clinch work. And I feel like once he sees the lack of clinch work in David Avanesyan, he might just close that distance and he might just manhandle him, which is going to be not fun. I don't think David Avanesyan fights very well off the back foot, and I don't think he's the type of guy who will be comfortable fighting off the ropes. And I believe Terence Crawford physically can definitely put him on the ropes. And with his strength, he could keep him on the ropes. And that's a bad place for David Avanesyan. Spacing is another thing. I feel like if David Avanesyan cannot close that distance early, he can, or at least every round. If he can't close the distance and he can't cut off the ring, and I feel like he has a smothered Terence Crawford. And if he can't do that, that's going to be an issue. Bud Crawford is not the guy you want with space and a guy you want who's allowed to think and knowing that he has the space to do so. That's not something that you want. So overall, I think this is a great fight. I think David Avanesyan is a strong guy. I think he's a very confident guy. I think he throws great combinations. I think when he wants to go in his bag of creativity, I think he can do so. Extremely powerful, extremely durable. This is definitely going to be a better fight than I initially imagined. And I do look forward to it. Bud definitely has his hands full. This is not going to be a walk in the park fight. And I think this is a winnable fight for David Avanesyan. I think he can win this fight. I always give guys credit and a shot. And I think with his punching power, I think with his aggression, I think with his ability to cut off the ring, I think it's possible. He's a very durable guy. He's not the type of guy, I don't care how cleanly Bud catches him. I don't too much see Bud Crawford knocking David Avanesyan out in one punch. And there you have it. That's my fight breakdown for David Avanesyan versus Terence Bud Crawford. As always, please drop your thoughts down below. And please like, please share, please subscribe to my channel.